Welcome to the Heartbeat Podcast with your host, Mike Sommer, where CIOs get what they won't hear anywhere else. Candid insights, real strategies, and the truth about leading tech in a world that's changing faster than ever.
Hello and welcome. Today we're joined by Scott Smeester, founder of CIO Mastermind, who built the community to reach tech leaders' isolation and reposition IT as a growth engine. A civil engineer turned serial entrepreneur, Scott bridges boardroom strategy and data center reality. His Rising Stars framework, 4 quick questions on alignment, value, data, and impact, help CIOs cut through overwhelm and win board buy-in. In this episode, he shared hard-won lessons and practical tactics mid-market CIOs can use to make their IT agenda irresistible. So Scott, thank you for joining.
Oh, thank you.
So maybe you can just walk us through what gaps did you see in the market that made you realize that a CIO mastermind needed to exist?
Well, when I started this, we're in our 7th year. And for several years prior to that, I was an interim CTO mostly, sometimes CIO type of stuff. So I call myself a geek with executive tendencies. I've always been drawn towards technology, but also leadership and always working with leaders and whatnot. I found that there's this gap in thinking with the leaders. A lot of times a leader, a CEO, or let's just say the CEO, a lot of times the CEO holds the technology at arm's length, holds a CIO or the person who's in charge of delivering tech strategy to the organization. And so I just saw that there really needs to be a way in which these tech leaders like myself can come together and get help. Whenever I went to any type of tech related organizations, I got real tired of being the audience. I got tired of being the one spoken to. And what I really needed as I started getting in bigger and bigger deals as an interim CTO was I felt like I needed a place where I could have meaningful and valuable time with other CIOs and CTOs who have been there and done that, but selfishly make it about my situation. I really wanted a half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, a lunch of a couple of CIOs or CTOs where I could talk. It was something on my mind. Is there a way that I could automate this? Is there this or whatever? Or how do I work with the CEO or CFO? Or I wanted time around, and that's a lot to ask. That's a lot, trying to maintain your network, trying to maintain a group and then get them together. That's tough. More people, 5, 6, 8, ones that are, and even maybe discussing my stuff on my behalf, like amongst themselves. So that's what I envisioned. The CIO Mastermind came about from that vision. Most of the time in technology, organizations are sponsored by a vendor, and that's great. However, I found myself wanting to have always make sure that the conversation was pure. I always wanted to leave with the most trusted information, something I could take to the bank. And so we made a business decision. I made this decision that we're going to not accept vendor money. We're not ever going to do that. That means we're going to charge for this. We're going to be an organization that is vendor free. So that's it in a nutshell. I saw the need and I saw something that I wanted, and I built something that I wanted that I thought was going to be important for other people. And when I started floating it out there to CIOs and people that I were connected with on LinkedIn and whatnot, the response was very positive. And so I'm like, this needs to be brought to the market.
Thank you for that. And maybe you can just add a few more points, but in a world full of tech communities and forums, what makes CIO Mastermind different? And why does that matter for today's CIO? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah. So CIO Mastermind is a leadership and strategy accelerator for CIOs. It's designed to help IT leaders become influential business executives and to further those causes, to move that forward. In short, what we do is we help turn CIOs into indispensable business leaders, driving efficiency, transformation, executive alignment. And so, CIO Mastermind's really different. There's 4 areas in which we see a lot of weaknesses in CIOs: a lack of business acumen, a lack of strategic leadership, a lack of professional development. These are people that come from server rooms and a lot of times desks, behind desks and programming. A lot of times just the executive suite just doesn't know how to leverage a CIO and a CTO properly, but they also need to know how to communicate with the rest of the C-suite as well.
So we just zoom out a little bit and look at what's really happening in the market right now.
Sure.
From your perspective, how has the role of a CIO, and let's just look at the mid-market, 250 employees up to 5,000, how would you say that has evolved over the past few years?
Last 2 years, I think that with the introduction of AI, it's continuing to become more important as time goes on. And we're still seeing some of the same challenges from a long time ago. From my perspective, it's not changing enough. That's why we're here. But I don't know how I can put my finger on much change other than it's just become more important in the views and in the eyes of the rest of the executive suite because of obviously AI. Prior to that, it was important because of security and cybersecurity issues and fraud and things like that. So it's slowly moving up, but still there's a lot of challenges being held at arm's length. I feel bad for a lot of companies' users because they're the ones who are suffering at the end of the day. Their users, their customers, the people who need the technology. And a lot of times companies are just treating technology as a cost and not an investment, and they're not really putting forth what they need to make positive changes for their users and their customers.
Do you believe there's issues that CIOs are actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis behind the scenes that's not the flashy new conversation of things like digital transformation, but like the day-to-day nuts and bolts that CIOs have to face and deal with? Is that something that has come up in your forums?
Yes, it comes up. That's what our forums are for. It comes up all the time, all different kinds of issues with their team, with their leadership, with the rest of the executive C-suite. I don't facilitate groups anymore. My co-founder does, and he's in the trenches with all the CIOs. I'm more on the side of business development. So it's hard for me to speak directly to what they're going through right now, other than what I hear from my co-founder.
That's fair enough. And just in what you've been made aware of, do you believe there's any trends or risks that CIOs are not paying enough attention to or have not been given focus to maybe yet?
Generally, no. I think they're the ones. What kind of risks? Let me think. There's always new risks, things that the ones that they don't know about are the ones that are going to get them. And they're always coming up. There's new ones coming out all the time with fraud, AI, especially AI is going to new levels where like deep fakes and things like that. So there are some of those risks, but the ones that they're not aware of, they're probably aware of most of these and they have to be cautious of that. So I trust that most CIOs and CTOs out there are trying to stay ahead of that. But I don't think that there's anything that I can specifically say that they're the ones that are CIOs, not me right now. I could probably learn more from them than me telling them what to watch out for.
One of the reasons I brought that question up is I heard that there are some CIOs and executives who are having a hard time of determining their policy and governance around AI. And
Right.
so they put almost we're not going to use it. And so what that has done is created almost a phantom AI where the employees are just simply buying a new laptop or using their own personal laptop or even their phones and using AI on that device. And so completely circumventing the rules and mandates of the company because it's user driven. And so it's really more of those hearsay type of conversations of things that you might have been privy to that aren't often topics discussed openly, but it's something that's seen as a major issue that people will find a way. If it's going to make their job easier, and if you're not enabling them using the tools, technology, and ways of thinking differently, it will find the path of least resistance, and it might completely circumvent everything you put in.
That's absolutely true. And so they're CIOs, the tech leaders are put in a really tough position with AI. They need to minimize the risks, but all, like you say, they need to enable people to be able to use it. I was recently introduced to a really interesting product. It is a product that puts guardrails around AI usage. It protects on the input, it protects on the learning, it protects on the output. So it's checking responses. And so there's some really cool tools out there that can help a tech leader put AI in the hands of their users. Obviously, it's not cheap, but there's some really effective products out there.
I'm curious on this next area, and I'm hoping you have some insights around what I would call the new consulting reality. If we look at the traditional market, you have a world where a company would hire a group of consultants, whether it's an IBM, Accenture, or a small boutique firm, and they would have that group come in and do the work for them. So call that more of a done for you model versus the other side, which would be a do it yourself of I'm just going to hire my own internal team. I'm going to seek a forum. I'm going to seek peers, but I'm going to just muscle this out a bit, trying to figure it out. Do you believe that there is a place for a third space or a third model in today's market?
Yep. Yeah, I do. I think that with the upcoming and the rising tide of like fractionals, there's a way, like me as a business owner, small business owner, I really leverage that a lot. I have a person that's playing the role of chief marketing officer. I have a person playing the role of chief revenue officer and handling all the sales stuff. I have a person handling operations, so playing the role of a COO. And you can do that at the fraction of a cost. You don't need full-time people. And so there's ways of leveraging that. Now, bigger companies obviously need that, but small companies, and if that's just a temporary need, yeah, there's always, I think, a need for that, for sure.
And taking what you just said, the fractional, I think it's not only the person that comes in that brings a value, but the systems they bring with them. So instead of trying to create things from scratch, turning to someone who has been through, has identified, and has solutioned the problem before, and not trading time for money. So not coming in saying, I'm going to give you this many hours, but coming in saying, I can solve this problem and I can bring this best practices, know-how, these systems to actually enable you to achieve your outcome. And so I would call that more of a done with you model. And I just feel like there's going to be an appetite for there to be a new place that's carved out, as I believe the traditional consulting model is fundamentally broken. And what I mean by that is there's no incentive to fix the problem. There's incentive to keep engaged in the client engagement and to keep finding things and to create a moat around what you're bringing so the client can't ever turn you off. And I think clients are getting really frustrated with it. Are you hearing the same thing, or would you have any comment on that?
You're saying that they're frustrated about continuing with the same problem?
With the same outsourced model where they have to pay large amounts of money to have someone else fix the problem, and it never gets passed on where there's self-sufficiency.
Yep.
Because the consulting model is I'm going to keep charging you money, and so long as I keep identifying more problems or keep myself busy, you can't get rid of me.
And so ask the question again, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Do you feel like there's a place for a new model instead of a do-it-yourself or a done for you? Do you think there's a new model? And you mentioned it with the fractional ownership of a new way of providing value to the leadership teams inside of companies like CIOs.
Yeah, there's always a place for that. If there's a good, better solution to the way things are currently being done, yeah, absolutely. I just think that's a natural evolving, that's the way markets evolve. If you can provide something. And so, yeah, somebody who has some type of a framework that they can bring in and introduce that's already been developed. Like for me, our whole sales framework has been introduced. We're working through a big project this year to introduce a whole sales framework. I hired a chief revenue officer and advisor to do that. And he doesn't want to be long-term. He wants to get in and get out and have the next client. He's got plenty of people that need help. Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. The long-term consulting, the contracts. I mean, I've seen a lot of people frustrated about that type of engagement.
So if we just look at practical ways that CIO Mastermind serves your leaders and serves your executives, What have you learned that truly drives engagement and loyalty amongst the senior tech leaders? Is there something that your team is doing that really is that stickiness to keep people coming back and involved and wanting to really lean into the CIO Mastermind?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll start out by saying, since we've hired the chief revenue officer and have really done a lot of strategic assessments to our client base, we recently learned that we have a 90% renewal rate over 6 years, which is really high. On top of that, we have a 100% NPS score. You can't get any better. And I had mistakenly thought we're going to have to shift and maybe pivot what we're doing. But after this revenue advisor took time to speak and understand all those things, he's absolutely not. You got to keep doing what you're doing because you have a really unique situation here, whatever you're doing it right. It's a lot of it is obviously the product that we have, these peer groups that allow the CIOs to show up, the CTOs to show up and get the help of a curated group of other CIOs and CTOs in a vendor-free environment. That in and of itself is a very unique product. That really does help. But we have these groups, they're confidential. Obviously, we make anyone who shows up to these groups sign a confidentiality pledge. Our groups are facilitated by an executive coach. Not only that, we follow a process within the group that keeps the conversation on track, that allows the conversation to go deep into the challenges that our members are bringing to the table, which is why we have a 100% NPS score. Yeah, we have just found out that this is valuable, and the way in which we do it is very valuable as well. So if that answers the question, that's our stickiness right there.
100% NPS and that level of renewal is saying
Yep.
that there's definitely something there. As
Yep.
you're scaling your organization, being a very high touch focused audience, are there any challenges that have surprised you as you've been building this?
Challenges. Let me think. I can't really think of any challenges right off the top of my head. About the business part of it, is that what you're asking?
Yeah. As
Okay.
you've been building out CIO Mastermind, are there been any challenges that you've really had to overcome that might be insightful for another leader or someone who is, whether they're doing something similar or they've come to a point where they just don't know what to do next?
Some of the challenges is it's day-to-day business challenges, how to address those with the economy the way it is right now. People are uncertain in the economy right now, and that's not great for the economy. It's challenging. So we're going through some challenges right now and just growing out the sales, working to build out and take it to the next level. The first 6 years of this business was bootstrapped. It took several years before we were at the point where we had enough business flowing where we could pay ourselves on a consistent basis, me and my co-founder. And so just overcoming those challenges was really difficult. But if you just stay the course, really rely on the people who are the experts in their field. Really highly recommend that.
That's really insightful. So looking ahead 12 to 18 months, how do you see CIO Mastermind evolving and meeting the changes of the evolving tech landscape?
So the other things that we do beyond just our peer groups is we do mentoring and coaching. We work a lot with teams. A lot of times in the technology department, they're looking for other leaders. Succession. I think that succession is a really big topic that's going to be coming up in the next several years. And how can we find new leaders from the tech groups? Typically, they can be hard. They can be hard to develop into leaders. But that's really we do a lot of business in that now, but we forecast a lot of new business, one-on-one coaching, one-on-one mentoring. In a world of AI, where AI is huge, where the business is going to be, it's going to be on the human side of things.
Absolutely.
And that's where we are. That's where we're going to be.
Scott, I just want to say thank you. You provided some amazing insights. Scott, thank you so much for joining and really appreciate your time.
Thank you.